So Senator Sheehan, please.
Thank you, and just because I come up here as part of being a member of the General Assembly doesn't mean I'm also not honored to be working with this august body here, and some of the statements that have been said here, I think, bear that out. That's a very honorable group of people here. I'll start with the line item veto. There's been some talk about line item veto perhaps eliminating fraud in government, but I think that's uncharitable to say the least. No one has proven that, and that may well be an issue that the courts or the Attorney General or something get involved with, but not necessarily directly related to line item veto per se. There could be waste. There could be leaner government, more efficient government. I think that's fair to say that that's a good possibility. But it's not a foregone conclusion either, because that also, waste is also first in the eye of the beholder. It's opinion, and it's sometimes subjective. But it also depends upon who's the governor. If the governor wants to do something, they can do it. If they don't want to do it, they won't do it. So at the end of the day, I think it comes down to line item veto, if implemented and first approved by the voters. It's a tool in the governor's toolbox. It's another tool. Similar to a veto right now is a tool, but it's something of a sledgehammer and not a scalpel. You either veto the entire package of the budget or you don't. I think if we have a line item veto, we would have a more direct accountability as to what eventually will be part of the budget as enacted. Because you have a second look at particular items as opposed to the document as a whole. You have a proof, a second proof, if you will. And any one of us here has written, and I'm sure all of us have, drafts of documents, letters to the editor, whatever it may be. Sometimes that extra look-see is helpful in refining the final product. And I think that is something that in politics or in the field of politics we call a check. And I think a check relative to the budgetary power of the General Assembly is not untoward. Just given the history, given the authority, and beginning with plenary power of the General Assembly, that's something that I think we should consider. Because if you can really only have effective check and balances between and amongst equals, dare I point what might be going on in Washington, D.C. right today. I think there's unchecked power by the President of the United States, by the members of Congress, which is being represented by the Republican Party. I'll say that straight out, unless they assert themselves, which they have not. And I think the governor can assert himself or herself. I've seen it. I've been up here long enough, not as long as a couple members here, but a couple folks. But I've seen stronger-willed governors be able to wield the bully pulpit in a way that creates a true equal between particularly the branches of the executive branch and legislative branches. Apart from that, I have seen in many years, and probably most of my years, the legislative branch focusing clearly on the budgetary process of having an upper hand. So to really have, again, a separation of powers in which both parties working, sometimes at odds, creates balance in government, a balance of power. And I think that dates back to the time of the Greeks, to Montesquieu, French philosopher, in terms of separation of powers. So, of course, it does come down to if the governor were to have this tool in his or her toolbox, again, it doesn't mean that the General Assembly now is just close the book on overriding any particular item that's in the budget. It gives the General Assembly an opportunity to override any particular item that with a scalpel has been excised and taken out of the budget as being wasteful or whatever the governor's reason may be. And of course, I would expect the General Assembly to proof that or to rebuke that and would override the veto. And I might add that the override threshold for the General Assembly is lower than that in Washington, D.C. It's only 60% threshold as opposed to 67% threshold. I think that also makes a difference, and it also inures a benefit to the General Assembly in its power to override a governor's veto even presently. There are 44 states, as we know, it's been already stated, that have the line item veto. What I would say is they probably done their due diligence. They probably have looked at this and studied the issue as well, and there's a reason why there's 44 of them. There may be a reason why there 6 of them aren't part of that 44, us being one of them in other New England states. But I think it's something that we should strongly consider. I would support it. And perhaps we could allow the voters to take a look at that in terms of a referendum.